I'm speaking with Jesse Shimata, the writer and director of the film you just watched. What's the name of that film, Jesse?
A Simple Fucking Gesture.
See how I did that?
It's all on me.
Now I'm not in trouble with anyone I
Yeah,
know.
I'm the bad guy.
So, this is one of the more interesting conversations for me to have with a director, in the sense that it should be simple, but I find these kinds of comedies are actually kind of hard to talk about sometimes. It's almost like they fall apart in the middle of the conversation because they're so much what they are. But I'm sure you're a funny guy, we'll make this happen. So first of all, I know that you claim that this was shot in Canada, but based on the traffic and the language, it's obvious to all of us it was shot in Long Island, New York.
Absolutely. It was shot everywhere. It was shot wherever you want it to be. Yeah, exactly.
But seriously, I've been to Toronto, I've been to Montreal, I've been to Canada, a good handful of times, and I never experienced this particular vibe there. So was I just lucky? Or was there any specific inspiration behind this?
I don't know. I mean, I find that, being Canadian, you have this perception from Americans as Toronto, Canada in general, as being such a nice, warm, calm place, and that this traffic doesn't exist or this kind of aggression doesn't exist. I mean, for me, it was, for a period of time, I was driving back and forth in rush hour I live just outside of Toronto. And so I was driving in regularly, and no, the anger, let me assure you, the anger's there, the traffic is there. We have one of the worst traffic problems in North America, and there's a lot of road rage. I mean, it's probably coming from a different perspective, in that there isn't that, there aren't as many guns. So there's not that immediate fear. There's that posturing in the car that you do, that rage and that posturing that I would do too. I mean, I would, get so angry and have that kind of in the wall confines of the car, that bravado and that machismo, and then you get to a certain point. For this, I wanted to take it to the point where it was just kind of beyond the point of yelling from inside the car to what happens if somebody actually does pull over, and the consequences that aren't tragic necessarily. And it's for maybe somebody like me, in a way, to experience that without it turning really ugly.
So who was that really good-looking actor playing the one-eyed, one-armed land pirate?
Well, I mean, hopefully you can see the similarity in me and him, but no, that's my dad, Chuck Shimata, and he's a working, well-known Canadian actor, and he's done a lot of American things as well. He was in the Sentinel and a lot of stuff that gets shot in Toronto. He was one of the go-to guys, and he's my go-to guy for that age range. I mean, he claims he can play 16 through 75, but I'll keep it in the over 65 world right now. But no, I've made a few shorts with him and collaborated on some scripts with him, and it's always a great experience. And he's got a great sense of humor, and doing something like that was right up his alley. So
yeah, no, he's definitely got a recognizable face. And
yeah, I'm
sure a lot of our viewers have seen him in things before. So tell me about your two leads, Paul Bates and Christy Bruce.
Well, this in many ways is a kind of a pandemic proof. I didn't shoot it during this period, during the COVID times, but it's perfect for that because it takes place in the car, and they're a real life couple. They're husband and wife, and they're friends. And so it was easy to cast. I didn't have to do really a casting. I just said, "Will you do this?" And they said, "Great." And we did some read throughs, and it felt right. And I'd known Paul for a long time. I'd worked with him as a writer and directed some of the things he'd written, and he comes from both of them come from a kind of an improv background through Second City in Toronto and Chicago, and they could kind of roll with the punches in terms of going on. It was a rush. So whenever we couldn't nail a take, I would make sure that they knew that they could just kind of go off and do their own thing, and I felt confident that whenever they did that kind of thing, it was going to turn out okay. So, much of, it's kind of a split in terms of what was originally scripted, and then stuff that they kind of brought to the table as we were going along
Mhm.
in our panic and through the night, one night shoot through you know
Wow,
this
one
kind of,
night shoot, like how many hours was it?
well, from dusk till dawn, essentially. I mean, we used natural night light, lack of light, and we had, it's a challenge because you have to, in this situation, we had to permit off the street and have some police blocking traffic and things like that. And we brought in extras to, the logistics of it are maybe more entertaining than the film itself. I don't want to sell myself short, but what goes on behind the scenes, as you know, in a film shoot can be pretty funny and stressful, and this was no different. So
I loved her accent in this. I felt like she was putting it a little, making it a little stronger than maybe normal. Am I right about that?
in what kind of accent?
Um, it was kind of a stereotypical Canadian accent. It almost sounded like an accent meant for Americans to listen to.
Maybe, or maybe that's just how some of us speak up here.
Uh,
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think, without getting too in depth into to what I was thinking before doing it, or maybe it's just in retrospect, this is how I kind of thought it, you know. Um, but I think part of it is just that there is a sense of that kind of, I didn't want them to be, I wanted them to feel like very non-confrontational,
mm,
waspy, white privilegey kind of couple.
mhm.
And I think that, in the accent and their behavior really kind of came through. Um, and and that was hopefully evident. I think it is. I mean, I think they're not, they I wanted it to feel like they were um doing okay. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know how to describe it, but there's that feeling, without getting too political about it in any way,
right.
is that they I think what for me made the film kind of fun, especially at the end, is that he goes through this massive rant, and they have this confrontation, but he hasn't changed, and he's just like the rest of them in a way, And so yeah, that's my convoluted answer to the accent thing.
Became very serious all of a sudden. Wow.
Yeah, dark, very dark.
Yeah, but the biggest concern was really about should she keep the pictures of the cats up anyway. So,
That's really the bottom line, for the script and the story, was, yeah, definitely the cats in the office. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, you already kind of answered what I had been wondering about is how much was improv. So I'm guessing when it's like this at the end of the day, do you even remember what you wrote and what they came up with, or does it just kind of become this whole other thing?
I mean, it was pretty, it didn't become another thing. I think part of the ways that I've worked in the past too is always knowing, at least going in, I'm not prepared in many ways, but in some ways, in terms of knowing what I want to get at the end of the day, I'm pretty prepared that way. So going in, I knew that we had the script, and I knew that we didn't have a ton of takes in us. We shot with multiple cameras just to be safe as well. Um, and it it was always, I had that confidence in them to say, okay, if we're not going to get it, at least let's get the point across. And they threw out lines, on the night, and we kept those. But in terms of what 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 was originally there on the script is versus what came out at the end, it's pretty close. Because I feel like they really rehearsed it and they knew what they were doing. But I felt like, with confidence, they could throw out any line, and it would make sense and still be funny.
What were some of the funnier behind the scenes, or at least they seem funny now, behind the scenes issues you had to deal with?
I mean, the biggest challenge was time, obviously, and yes, I agree. They were definitely fun. They're funny now. The the night of was, I swore the morning as we were standing there and the sun was coming up, and I was really thrilled with what we got. But at the end of it, I'm like, I'm never going to do this one night shoot again, because you're not in a rhythm. It's not like you're shooting a movie over
Mm,
20 days or something. You're in this, you just have to stay up the night before as long as you can to train your body. And then you have a lot of coffee and try and make it work. But I think the biggest challenge was timing the extras
mm,
in their cars to kind of be at a pace that worked. I mean, it sounds kind of minor and innocuous now, because you don't really see, in retrospect, you don't see, we kind of cut around it. You don't really see those background cars. But I felt like at the time they were so important to establish the traffic, this
mm,
kind of traffic jam and this construction thing, that it was a nightmare. It was just a nightmare, kind of convincing the background actors to drive. At one point, we were wondering why the traffic wasn't moving, and one of the PAs ran ahead, and the first car in the lineup of cars, the guy was asleep, totally asleep, just idling in his car. So it was kind of like that from start to finish. Another funny, not funny moment was we got a deal on a smoke machine. The idea was that at the construction site, there was going to be smoke coming from
mhm,
the vent on
mm.
the street grid. And we got a great establishing shot with smoke coming out, and then it died. So we had the establishing shot of the smoke coming out, and then every subsequent shot has no smoke. So that I still paid the guy for it. I don't know what happened, but it was one of those situations where it's just like you got to roll with it. You don't have time to,
Yeah,
low budget filmmaking. So
yeah, that seems pretty realistic for most construction I've driven through anyway.
okay, good, good.
Smoke machines almost never working properly.
No, no, no.
Oh man. So what are you working on now? I mean, I know this is like a rough time to ask that question, but what do you have going on?
Um, it's we talked about it a little bit before. It's a good time to be writing. So I'm writing. I'm not a heavily disciplined writer, but I do have a few um, TV projects in development, and they kind of have a schedule, and there's a bit of money that I'm being paid, which is nice to actually write right now. So it's actually forcing me to get the work done. Otherwise, it could take years. Um, my ambition is, I mean, it's hard to stay as a writer. I find that the toughest thing is to stay on any kind of schedule and meet deadlines without deadlines. So trying to do that and enjoying being at home with my family in Toronto. Um, and we don't go we haven't been going out much, so it's kind of just enjoying what's around. And upcoming projects, I have a half-hour comedy series that is in development with a puppet rock band and Jason Schwartzman. So that's
Sorry.
it's very odd, but it's fun, and hopefully we get to see that next year. And then kind of a family kind of an adventure series that I'm working on, and a feature film, a darkly humorous, um, you know, uh, feature that I hope one day we'll get to shoot in the near future.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
how are your Fortnite skills coming along? Are you developing those?
My Fortnite watching skills are great. I it's the bane of my existence, to be honest. We're doing a Zoom call right now, and it will often drop out because one of my kids is on Fortnite or some other game and killing the internet. So it's what's happening right now. It seems like I'm guilty of not. Both my wife and I are very guilty of not uh, monitoring screen time as much as we should be. We've adjusted, um, for better or for worse. It seems like it's a new kind of world we're living in right now, and hopefully it doesn't last. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just the way it is, I guess. So
Jesse, thank you so much for giving us your time,
Thank
and
you.
hope we can have you out here someday.
I'd love to be there. I mean, I was considering sneaking across the border somehow, but that's not going to happen. So thanks very much for screening the film, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And if you didn't, well, I don't know. What are you going to do?